"Mom, check out my new outfit," my 8-year-old son Noah called out, spinning around in his navy blue suit. His face glowed with excitement. He was ecstatic to be the ring bearer at his Uncle Ethan's wedding. "You look so handsome, darling," I said warmly, though a tightness gripped my heart. Noah, whom I had adopted, was the center of my universe, but my family had never fully embraced him. Join the Soulful Stories channel today. Hit subscribe to stay updated and never miss a story. My name is Rachel. I'm 36 years old and a single mother by choice. 6 years ago, I met Noah at a foster home, and I knew immediately we were meant to be a family. But my parents and my brother Ethan never shared my joy. A kid from Brazil, Ethan had once sneered with disapproval. "Why couldn't you adopt someone who fits in with our family?" "He's from Colombia," I corrected for the 100th time, "and he's perfect just the way he is." Ethan's wedding was just days away, and the only reason Noah and I were invited was that our dad had insisted. Ethan was marrying Lauren, the daughter of one of the most prominent businesswomen in town. At the rehearsal the day before the wedding, I noticed hushed conversations among the groomsmen, followed by cold glances at Noah. "Ethan," I said, cornering my brother during a break, "what's going on?" He barely acknowledged me. "Lauren's family is concerned," he muttered. "They don't want a foreign adopted kid ruining the wedding pictures." I froze, trying to register his words. "I'm sorry, what?" He sighed impatiently. "Look, Rachel, you've always been the odd one out. We all know it." A chill spread through me. "Odd one out? What are you even talking about?" He finally faced me fully, his eyes flashing with cruelty. "You know what I mean. You don't look like anyone in our family." Mom and Dad have always been uncomfortable about it. It was true. I had darker skin and curlier hair than anyone else in the family. But I had always attributed it to random genetics. "You're being ridiculous," I said, though my voice trembled. "Whatever. Just keep your adopted kid out of the way tomorrow," he said coldly. That night, Noah looked up at me with troubled eyes as I tucked him in. "Mom, why doesn't Uncle Ethan like me?" I hugged him tightly. "Some people just don't know how to see how special you are." "The kid said I'm not a real cousin because I'm adopted," he whispered. My anger surged, but I stayed calm for Noah's sake. Family isn't about blood. It's about love. The next day at the church, Noah looked radiant, practicing with the wedding rings. But during the photo session, things fell apart. "The adopted boy can't be in the family photos," Lauren's mother suddenly announced. Noah's face fell. "But I'm the ring bearer," he protested, his eyes filling with tears. "You're not part of his family," Ethan said harshly. "Neither of you are." Noah stiffened in my arms as my heart raced. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. Ethan turned to our parents, a smug look on his face. "Go ahead, tell her the truth." My parents went pale. My mother burst into tears. "Rachel," my father began, but before he could continue, a deep voice rang out from the church entrance. "She's right. You were never part of this family." Everyone turned to see a tall, distinguished man in his 60s. His face was an older, masculine version of my own. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, bristling. The man's gaze stayed on me. "My name is David Sinclair, and Rachel is my daughter." A stunned silence fell over the church. My mother fainted, and the man I thought was my father turned ashen. "This is insane!" Ethan shouted. "You're ruining my wedding." David Sinclair remained composed as he stepped forward with an envelope. "I have DNA results, legal papers, and the full story that's been hidden from you for 36 years. Noah squeezed my hand. "Mom, who is he?" Before I could answer, my mother, now conscious, let out a strangled scream. "You had no right to come here. We had an agreement." David's expression hardened. The agreement was that I'd stay away until Rachel turned 36. She had a birthday last week. My head spun. "What agreement? What are you talking about?" "Perhaps we should discuss this in private," David suggested. "No." Ethan snapped. This is my wedding. Get out. Both of you. David's sharp gaze locked on Ethan. I am the CEO of Sinclair Industries. Your future mother-in-law works for me. Are you sure you want me to leave? Lauren's mother paled. You're David Sinclair. David ignored her and turned back to me. Rachel, I know this is overwhelming, but your birth mother, Isabella, would want you to know the truth. I don't want to hear it, I said, shaking. I scooped Noah into my arms. Let's go, honey. Wait. David pulled a worn photograph from his wallet and extended it to me. Just look at this. I hesitated before taking it. The image showed a stunning woman with curly hair and warm brown skin, a mirror image of me. She was holding a baby. My breath hitched. It felt like looking at a reflection of myself. Your mother passed away just hours after you were born, David explained, his voice heavy with grief. I was shattered. In my despair, I made the mistake of trusting your nanny, the woman you now call your mother. She offered to raise you. I was drowning in sorrow. I signed the papers. I thought it was best. My adoptive mother had cried. You were a wreck, drinking yourself into oblivion. David's eyes burned with rage. So you stole my daughter? You erased every trace of Isabella from her life? The church buzzed with hushed whispers. The wedding had turned into chaos. Noah tugged on my sleeve. Mom, he's like us, isn't he? He whispered. He was looking for you, like you looked for me. His words hit me like a revelation. I looked at the family that had raised me, the family that had always made me feel out of place. Then I turned to David, whose eyes mirrored mine, whose skin matched mine. I exhaled sharply. Let's go. Lauren let out a bitter laugh. Of course, just run away. You and your little charity case never belonged here anyway. I turned to her one last time, my voice steady. You're right, Lauren. I was never part of this family. I glanced at Noah and smiled. And I'm so grateful for that. David took us to a private restaurant, where Noah quickly warmed up to him. Between bites of his dessert, he peppered David with questions. Does this mean you're my grandpa? Noah asked, his eyes sparkling with excitement. David chuckled and looked at me for permission. If your mother allows it, I'd love to be your grandfather. I took a deep breath. I need to know everything, I said finally, from the very beginning. David nodded, pulling a leather-bound photo album from his briefcase. Your mother, Isabella, was an architect, he began. We met when her firm was hired to design my company's headquarters. It was love at first sight. I flipped through the pages, seeing pictures of a couple joyfully traveling the world, building a life together. They looked so happy and in love. When she got pregnant with you, it was the best moment of our lives, David said, his voice thick with emotion. But there were complications during childbirth. He swallowed hard, his composure wavering. The doctors, they could only save one of you. My hands shook as I traced my mother's face in a hospital photo. She held a newborn, gazing down at me with pure love. She chose you, David said softly. Tears spilled down my face. I fell apart after she died, David admitted. I was lost. Margaret, your nanny, the woman you've called Mom, took advantage of my vulnerability. She convinced me I was incapable of raising you and that you needed a stable family. Margaret already had a daughter, Lauren, but she couldn't have more children. She said you could fill the space left by the siblings Lauren would never have. I trusted her and let her convince me this was best. I clenched my fists. Why did you wait so long? The legal agreement I signed in my weakness stated I couldn't contact you until you turned 36, he said bitterly. For the past 35 years, I've been gathering evidence, building a case, and watching over you from a distance. A shiver ran through me. You watched me. David nodded solemnly. I was at your college graduation, sitting in the last row. When you adopted Noah, I hired private investigators to ensure you were both safe. And when you opened your little bookstore, I was your first customer, though you didn't recognize me. Noah gasped. Wait! The man with the sunglasses who buys books every month. David smiled. That was me. I couldn't be in your life, but I needed to be part of it in some way. I stared at him, my life's puzzle rearranging itself. Wait, the bookstore loan. The bank approved it so fast. David gave a guilty nod. Your business plan was strong, but I may have pulled a few strings. My phone buzzed for the 100th time, calls and messages from my adoptive family. I ignored them. What happens now? I asked. David leaned back. That's up to you, he said gently. Legally, you're my heir. Sinclair Industries will be yours someday. But more than that, I want the chance to be your father and Noah's grandfather. Do I have to decide right now? Of course not. Take all the time you need. He hesitated before pulling out another envelope from his briefcase. His fingers lingered over it before handing it to me. Your mother left this for you, he said softly. She gave it to me before you were born. She was afraid she might not be there for you. David's hands trembled as he continued, his voice cracking. I remember how she looked at me, pleading, telling me if anything happened to her, you should have this. I told her I wasn't sure I could raise you alone. I feared I wouldn't be enough. He paused, closing his eyes as if gathering his thoughts. But I promised her anyway, even though I doubted myself. I wanted to be the man she believed I could be. His voice softened to a whisper. Now I'm here, doing my best, trying to live up to that promise. With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. The paper inside was slightly worn, the ink faint in places, but the words remained powerful, each one laced with a mother's love. My dearest Rachel, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer by your side. I always prayed you would never have to see this letter, that I would be there to watch you grow into the incredible woman I knew you'd become. But in the quiet moments, I couldn't shake the feeling that my time might be shorter than I wanted. If that's the case, I need you to know, every single moment I spent with you, from the first flutter of life within me, was my greatest joy. Your father is a good man. He loves you, even if he struggled to show it. Please forgive him for the distance and silence. Love doesn't always know how to speak. It gets tangled in pain and regret. But his love for me and for you was always real. As my final gift, I want you to have a part of me, a place we were meant to be together. The first home I ever designed, the house where you were born, it's yours now. Fill it with love, with laughter, with memories. And never, not for 1 second, doubt that you were loved more deeply than words could ever express. With all my love, Mom. Inside the envelope was a key, cold and solid in my palm. Another piece of paper followed, the deed to the house. David's voice broke as he spoke. This is where your mother and I dreamed of raising you, he said softly. I kept it just as she left it, hoping one day you'd come home. A week later, Noah and I moved in. David helped us settle, giving us space but making sure we knew he was always nearby if we needed him. For the first time, I felt like I belonged. In the days after the wedding, my adoptive family made several attempts to contact me, missed calls, unread messages, and voicemails filled with guilt and demands. I ignored them all, but Ethan wouldn't let it go. One afternoon, as I was arranging books in my new bookstore, the bell over the door chimed sharply. Ethan marched in, his face a storm of frustration and indignation. You owe me an explanation, he demanded as he strode toward the counter. I didn't even look up from the book I was shelving. For what exactly? For ruining my wedding, he snapped, slamming his hands on the counter. I arched an eyebrow. The wedding still happened, didn't it? Ethan's mouth tightened. Yes, but not the way it was supposed to. Lauren's parents are furious. They lost business deals because of what you did. They're blaming me for everything. I sighed and placed the book on the shelf. That's not my concern. His eyes burned with anger. You were my sister. That made me pause. I met his gaze, my voice steady. No, Ethan. You never allowed me to be. His expression faltered for a moment, but his pride wouldn't let him admit the truth. He scoffed and stormed out. The door slammed behind him. I watched him go, feeling nothing. For the first time, I was free of their expectations, their judgment, their conditional love. And I didn't regret it. 6 months later, life had settled into a rhythm I never thought possible. Noah thrived in ways that filled my heart with pride. He adored his grandfather. David picked him up from school, helped with homework, and spoiled him endlessly. One day, he brought home a model train set, something Noah had dreamed about for months. "Grandpa, this is amazing!" Noah exclaimed, his eyes wide as he set the pieces on the floor. "A true engineer deserves the best tools," David said with a playful grin, ruffling Noah's hair. Their bond was effortless and natural, like they'd always known each other. As for Ethan and me, we took things step by step. We met for coffee, shared dinners, and took long walks where he told me stories about my mother, Isabella. Through his words, she became more than just a fading photograph. She became real. She had loved sketching designs and notebooks, always smelled faintly of lavender and pine, and hummed softly when she was deep in thought. She had lived, she had loved, and she had given everything for me. The house she built, the one she never got to raise me in, had become our home. At night, when the world was quiet, I would run my fingers over the banisters, the delicate carvings, the small, thoughtful touches she had poured her soul into. She built this house for us, for me, and now for Noah. Framed photos line the walls, telling our story. Isabella holding her newborn daughter, me years later cradling Noah, and now Noah laughing with his grandfather. 3 generations, forever connected. Sometimes, the family we choose, the family that chooses us, feels more real than the one we were born into. Noah taught me that when I adopted him. And now, through reconnecting with David, I finally understood it. As Noah often says, love creates a family. After 35 years, I finally knew what that truly meant. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. This is Soulful Stories, where love and justice always find their way. See you next time.